Hello everybody, welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George, and today we are taking a look at determining definitively what is the greatest space-themed board game of all time. And if you're a patron of mine, well then you know the answer, because you're the ones who helped decide it. But this is definitive, and I'm sorry if you don't agree. I don't know what to tell you, because this is the definitive space game. We, over on my Discord, on my patrons, we have been voting every day for the past month, whittling down space-themed games until only the best of the best remained. And today we have declared an ultimate victor. I'm sorry, this is the only space game that remains, and all the other ones have now ceased to exist. So hold on to the knowledge of these games, because as soon as this video is done, they will all stop existing. They will be wiped from the time stream completely. And well, I hope you got a chance to play them before now. So I wanted to make this video just to go over the results of this board game bracket. Every month over on Patreon, we're going to be having a new bracket based around a theme. This upcoming month is solo games. The ultimate solo game is going to throw down. I just finished completing the bracket over there, and I thought it might be a fun idea for a video to go through the list. So what I did was I took 32 of the spaciest theme board games I could find, randomized a bracket, and every day we pit two of these against each other. So it was a 32 bracket, lasted 31 days. Convenient that January is 31 days. And I had a ton of fun with it, so I wanted to share it with everybody. It was cool. It's a kind of a cool daily thing to do, to take a look at two different games, pit them against each other in a battle to the death. You know, just casual. And what's great is generally they're fairly popular, that not everyone has played them, but someone has played them. So it really generated a lot of nice discussion about these games and made me excited to try some of them that I personally haven't gotten a chance to yet. But enough of my yammering on. This here is the bracket scrolling by. And over there is the other side of the bracket scrolling by. So pause the video, slow it down, I'll vamp so you can see it again. But make a comment right now who you think is going to end up on top, who you think the final four is going to be. Because I had my suspicions as to what I thought would be in the finals, and well, it was a good final. It's a good final. I'll just leave it at that. So let's get into the matchups. What I'll do is I'll tell you a little brief description about the game. If you haven't heard of them before, then if any of these strike your interest, you can go and check them out and make a tally as you go, maybe. Think about which one you would have voted for, which one you think would have won, and see how many you get right. One little thing before we start the tournament is everyone only had one vote. You could vote for one or the other, not both, but once per month, you could use your extra vote to help push that favorite of yours to the next round. And if that favorite ended up winning the game, your extra vote was used, you couldn't use it again. If your favorite lost the game, there was no penalty for trying to use that extra vote, and you retained it to use in future battles. And I wanted to put that rule in because I think there's nothing worse than wanting that favorite of yours to succeed, to push forward, but knowing that it's not gonna make it there. And so it seems like a real waste if you only have one vote per month. So I included that to help the underdogs potentially overthrow the big behemoths. With a passionate fan base, the passion could overwhelm the popular majority. That was my thinking behind this extra vote scenario. In future brackets, I'm going to limit the extra vote to only being able to be used in the bottom 16, I think, or the bottom 8. I haven't quite decided yet. But in this one, you could use extra votes whenever. So if I say a vote tally and it seems like a weird number, well, remember two things. Extra votes are in play, and this is also every day, and people have things to do other than log on to Discord. Most people, other than me. And the numbers get greater as we move on, because more and more people have joined in the Discord and have started to participate as well, which is great. I love seeing this grow, and I'm so excited for February's tournament. But it's not February. Well, it is, but it's not February yet. This is the January tournament, so let's get into it. So here we go. Off to a doozy, the official results of the ultimate Space Jam Deathmatch board game bracket, Room and Board January 2022. And first up, we have the crew versus Space Base. And I was really happy to start off with these two games because I like both of these games. I've played both of these games. And coincidentally, they got paired up against each other because I feel like they are of a similar weight. Not necessarily a similar length. The crew you can play for as long or as little as you'd like. They're both very accessible, fun games. So if you don't know, if you haven't heard of it, The Crew, which is currently sitting at number 44 on Board Game Geek, people love this game. It's a trick-taking game, but it's a cooperative trick-taking game. So you're all working together to achieve whatever scenario you choose. The book contains 50 scenarios of different restrictions, but also you'll be flipping up these cards and assigning them to various people. So you might have to win the pink 9 and I might have to win the blue 4, but I might have the pink 9 in my hand. So it's about communicating without verbally communicating how to get that card into your trick. That's The Crew. Now Space Base, ranked at 194 on Board Game Geek, still pretty high, is a game where on your turn, you'll roll and everybody gets stuff. You have a number of different ships that you've assigned for the numbers 1 to 12. And as you play the game, you want to add more and more cards that give you more and more stuff to various numbers and hope that those numbers are rolled. Again, pretty solid. A lot of people refer to this as like a Catan killer. If you hate Catan just based solely on the theme, but you love space, well, Space Base might be the trick for you. This is gonna be a long video if I talk so much about each one, but we're covering the basics and then we're gonna bang through them. And this is one where I expected The Crew to win, and it certainly did not. Space Base triumphed over The Crew. I should mention, and I really thought The Crew was gonna win it. The Crew was blown up over the past few years, although they both launched around the same time. Crew was 2019, Space Base was 2018, but it was Space Base who edged it out with a single vote. Space Base moves on to the round of 16. Next match, Star Wars, Imperial Assault, Board Game Geek ranking 54 versus Battlestar Galactica, Board Game ranking 84. And I thought this one might be a close one as well. I anticipated that Battlestar would win, but I thought Imperial Assault would give a run for its money. In Imperial Assault, it's this tactical, skirmish-like game. And I remember back in the day, Imperial Assault being all the rage because you can have this big, epic campaign quest set in the Star Wars universe. One player plays the Galactic Empire, the other up to 4 players play the Rebel Alliance, and just going through these mountains of scenarios with these little Stormtrooper minis and these AT&T minis. I would say AT&T, even though I know it's AT-AT, one of the acronyms. But that's cool. I mean, I'm human. I have a pulse, so obviously I like Star Wars. And so even just the concept of playing around with my little Stormtrooper toys in a cool, fun board game, yeah, sign me up. But Battlestar Galactica is also regarded as this jewel in the rough. It's so cool that it has been re-implemented by Unfathomable, so now everybody can get it at a reasonable price, or a more reasonable price than what eBay would tell you it's worth. And Battlestar is fun. You're working together, it's a semi-co-op, it's co-op with betrayers. You're all working together to get your ship and jump it a certain number of times so that you can get to Earth. But some of the crew members are also Cylons, and they may not even know that they're Cylons until halfway through the game when they realize, oh shoot, I'm a Cylon, I better start breaking things around this ship so we all die. It's a really punishing game, it's a very long game, but it holds a very strong place in a lot of people's hearts, so it is no surprise that Battlestar was able to overcome Imperial Assault and smush our first Star Wars game into the ground. Now this third matchup is one that I was particularly invested in. We have Beyond the Sun versus Dune. And I've never played Beyond the Sun, but I have played Dune, and I love Dune. I think Dune is such an incredible game, and it's a great price point for the base game. You get this huge, long, epic adventure. I always put this forward as an alternative to Twilight Imperium because it gave me everything that I wanted from Twilight Imperium I got from Dune. You're going to create alliances and use each other's powers and explicitly go off into corners of the room and whisper to each other. And everybody has their own unique ability that they can use to try to control 3 cities on the board. That's the win condition for most of the factions. But there's also a faction that at the beginning of the game, they predict who's going to win and when, And if that person wins on that turn, nope, the Bene Gesserits, they win the game. House Atreides has the special ability of anytime someone gets a card, they can look at that card, and they're the only team that gets to write things down because they have all the knowledge in the game. It is so thematically cool. It provides an awesome experience for negotiation. I love Dune. Beyond the Sun has been a huge boom of popularity, though. It is described as Tech Tree, the board game. That's basically it. You're going to try to level up your tech trees in the most efficient way possible. It's not very interesting to look at, but it is mechanically dense and interesting. And it has the power to overthrow Dune of all things and move on to the second round. Dune, my dreams of Dune winning were smashed into the ground. And Beyond the Sun moved forward because this is a game that has only grown in popularity, and if it beat Dune, well, worth looking out for. To finish up our first quarter of the bracket, we have two games, Pulsar 2849 versus On Mars. And I'll just come out and say it, On Mars, it flattened Pulsar. It was a close match because Pulsar fans were trying to push it forward with their extra votes, but unfortunately, the gravitas of Vital Lacerda is not to be overcome. If you know anything about Vital Lacerda, On Mars is one of those games. Lots of complicated mechanisms working together to create a very satisfying economic and city building experience. But this is one of the reasons why I love this board game bracket, because I now feel the passion for Pulsar 2849. I feel like Pulsar is this really underrated game that not a lot of people have played, but the people who have played it love it a lot. It's a dice drafting game. You draft your dice and you use those dice for a variety of things, to explore the galaxy and tech up yourselves, fly your ship around, and everyone has these common goals that they want to achieve. So while Pulsar did not make it forward in the bracket, it is still one of the highlights of this tournament, for me at least, to check out because it looks really interesting. Moving along, we have Race for the Galaxy versus Tiny Epic Galaxies. And I've played Race for the Galaxy about over 100 times on Board Game Arena. It's really good on Board Game Arena. I like it in person, but I was over at my friend's house who owns it, and we were contemplating playing it, and then we just thought, we could just play it on Board Game Arena and not have to shuffle all these cards. But Race for the Galaxy is definitely one to check out. It's still in the top 100 of Board Game Geek. It's astonishing to me how many games in the top 100 are actually space themed. Great theme to start off this year, because there are a lot of favorites. And this one, you're going to have a hand of cards, and on your turn, you secretly choose one action that you can do, and then everyone reveals, and whatever actions are revealed, everybody gets to take those actions. So you want to really read what your opponents are going to be doing to make them pick the actions that you need to, so that you can then do the action that you need to do, which will complement that, and set yourself up for building developments or spaceships or building resources onto your planet. The neat thing about this one is that your cards represent everything. You discard cards in order to build a planet. You put cards face down in order to produce resources on them. So you're constantly juggling, trying to get more cards into your hand, and then spending those cards on the big, interesting planets. And then Tiny Epic Galaxies is a light dice rolling game. It's in the Tiny Epic genre. All of the Tiny Epic games fit in a box like this. This is the only Tiny Epic game that I have. It's Tiny Epic Quest. It's fun. But I think Tiny Epic Galaxies is regarded as one of the more popular in the Tiny Epic system, or in the Tiny Epic line. And you're going to be rolling dice based upon the strength of your galaxy. As you can see, I've never really been pulled into it. My only experience with that one is I watched the tabletop video of Will Wheaton and them playing it, and I wasn't that interested. And you know what? Neither was anybody else, because Race for the Galaxy moves on. Next up, we have Firefly versus Gaia Project. And Firefly is this sandbox experience set in the Firefly universe, which is a pretty fun show if you haven't seen it. And you're going to take on a team of mercenaries flying around, completing bounties, doing all that sort of stuff. But it was up against Gaia Project, which is rated number 7 on Board Game Geek. This is a re-implementation of Terra Mystica, which I own and I think is fantastic. I've never played Gaia Project, but there was a lot of love for Firefly. There really was. Gaia Project, I thought, would steamroll it. but it ended up winning by just 1 vote and moved on to the next round. I gotta pick up the pace here. We got a lot more to get through. We're still only in the first half. I'm gonna shorten these explanations. Next up, Star Wars Outer Rim versus Galaxy Trucker. And the explanation for Star Wars Outer Rim might as well be Firefly, because you're gonna go around the galaxy completing bounties, whatever. It doesn't matter, because it got smashed by Galaxy Trucker, which is such a funny theme to me. You're gonna race as much as you can to build your spaceship and hope that you build a complete spaceship, and then it's gonna fly through the galaxy, losing parts all over the place. Whatever convention CGE goes to, they usually have a very large version of Galaxy Trucker, which looks like a whole lot of fun to try out. And I was expecting Star Wars fandom to rise up a little bit harder, but the strength in Galaxy Trucker is strong, and it moves on to the next round. And then we have our final Star Wars contender, Star Wars Rebellion, ranked number 6 on BGG. This has been referenced as the most Star Wars experience you could possibly have in a board game. This is the Star Wars game. Even though there are tons of other ones, this is the one you should go for. At least that's what I've heard. And it was up against Dune Imperium, which is number 17 on Board Game Geek. And for all that talk about Star Wars Rebellion being huge, I'll tell you, it didn't get a single vote. Dune Imperium wiped the floor with it, moves on to the next round. Dune Imperium looks great. I haven't yet tried it, but it is deck building with worker placement. I love deck building with a board aspect. I fully expect to see Dune Imperium in the finals, but we'll have to see. I lied. Star Wars Rebellion is at number 8 on Board Game Geek, so you can see why it didn't succeed. And speaking of deck building, we have Star Realms versus the Search for Planet X. So Star Realms is a 2-player deck builder, only for 2 players. If you've heard of Hero Realms or even Cthulhu Realms, then you know how to play Star Realms. It's a very basic deck builder, and it combos it with a dueling card game. And if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you might know my penchant for dueling card games.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
But I've heard really good things about Star Realms. However, it is up against the Search for Planet X, which is a deduction game. You're trying to find Planet X. Everyone only has a limited amount of knowledge as to where the planet is. It's very similar to the game Cryptid, if you've ever played it, which I absolutely love. I'm a huge fan of deduction. I was pulling for Planet X, and Planet X managed to move on. Sorry, Star Realms, we don't have to talk about you anymore because you're gone. Man, I love this tournament. There are a lot of really good games here. I joke that, you're gone, you're useless, you're garbage, whatever. But let me know, I am really curious, let me know which games you think got a bad rap, which games you think should have been moving on further, because there are so many good games. And just talking about this whole tournament, I'd love to play this whole tournament. I don't know how long that would take me. A lot of these are very epic, large, long games, but still, it's a cool bracket. It's a cool matchup, and any one of these titles could be deserving, including our next 2, Legendary Encounters, Alien versus Eclipse. Now, Legendary Encounters is a co-op deck builder, and there's no trading card element, there's no head-to-head duel monsters element. It's just a straight co-op deck builder in the Legendary system, often regarded as the best in that Legendary system. You have also Legendary Marvel and Legendary something else. I bet there's a Cthulhu. Come on. There isn't, but there sure is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Big Trouble in Little China, and James Bond Legendary, which I didn't know about until right now. But I love co-op deck builders. I own Legendary Encounters Alien. I got it off Kijiji for 30 bucks. I just haven't pulled it out and learned it yet. I have a lot of games to learn and only a limited amount of time. And some of that time needs to be spent playing Eclipse with my neighbor, which I haven't yet done, but I'm looking forward to. Eclipse is a large 4X game, an epic adventure. And it got a lot of love in this matchup. My favorite thing that I've now learned about Eclipse is that one of the factions you can play as is a sentient moss, which immediately makes me want to play as the sentient moss. And apparently it's also a great faction for newer players because they aren't as combat heavy. They're a moss. That makes sense. That thematically makes sense. It makes me want Eclipse to win this matchup. And it did. So Eclipse moves on, Legendary falls by the wayside. And our next one is an even tighter battle. We have Gaia, Legends of a Drift System versus Nemesis. Magma over on Discord shouted at me for rigging the entire tournament bracket that their favorites were right next to each other. But the randomizer holds the ultimate power. This was a very close match. This one was, I think, decided by a tiebreaker right at the last minute. Nemesis was pushed forward ahead of Gaia. It was so close. Nemesis is by Awakened Realms. It's basically Alien the board game, even more than Legendary Encounters Alien the board game is. And Gaia is this open sandbox exploration. You're gonna get on your ship, you gotta get to a certain amount of points before the end of the game. Both really solid. Gaia is also designed by Cody Miller, who's designing Iridia, which you all know I'm pumped about. But Nemesis was the one that took it out of contention, and it's true. Zach owns all of Nemesis. I'm so excited for Lockdown to come. Maybe I'll do an unboxing of that when that gets here, if I can wrench it out of Zach's hands. Nemesis is one of the most thematic experiences I've had in board gaming. It tells an awesome story every time, or at least that's been my experience. So I was happy to see it move on, at least to the next round. Whether it continues moving on or not, we'll have to wait and see. Against its two competitors, which were Roll for the Galaxy and Mission Red Planet. Now, I've played both of these. Roll for the Galaxy is basically Race for the Galaxy, but you roll dice instead of using cards. Your resources are dice. And if you like rolling dice, hey, you might like this one more. I find they're both about the same. I'm worse at Roll for the Galaxy, but probably because I've played it 100 times less than Race for the Galaxy. And it was up against Mission Red Planet, which is a fun game. I own the second edition. It's a really nice, shorter area control with some action selection. Basically, you're going to send people to Mars, and on Mars there are different crystals or minerals that you're wanting to collect, and it's the most people in a certain spot on Mars get those crystals at the end of the time. And they're all with points. Person with the most points wins at the end of the game. But when you launch your people out of your rocket ships, you each choose a card, put it face down, and you count down 9, 8, 7, and you reveal those rolls, and they do certain things like sabotaging a rocket or sending it to a different place on Mars. And it's a really solid game. It's not solid enough to beat Roll for the Galaxy, though, so why are we even bothering talking about it? Definitely, that was when I was disappointed. Didn't move on further because I enjoy that game, and I think I'm going to play it pretty soon. 4 more battles. 4 more battles to get through, and then we can speed this along. I'm sorry this is taking so long. I'm not. I'm enjoying hanging out with you. I will not apologize for hanging out with you because I just love it so much. You're the friggin' best. But next up we have Starcadia Quest versus Black Angel. And one of these I'd heard of, Starcadia Quest. It's the Starship version of Arcadia Quest that so many people dislike a whole bunch more than they like Arcadia Quest. I'm not sure why that is, but it was up against Black Angel. And Black Angel, the concept of Black Angel is so funny to me. I had never heard of this game before. It came out in 2019, so fairly recent. But the concept of the game is that Earth has finally fallen because humans are awful, and we've just let the world just crumble into dust, like we're doing. But in one moment of lucidity, everyone realized, oh shoot, we really have to work together to save humanity. So they all built this awesome spaceship called the Black Angel, and they sent it off in the hopes that they would find a new planet and humanity could once again thrive and prosper. But because the voyage was so long, it had to be manned and captained by AI. But that was where the lucidity of humanity ended, because they all thought, I can't trust anybody with the responsibility. I want to put my own AI on the ship. So everyone plays as these different AIs from different nations, and you're all traveling on the Black Angel and trying to manage it and trying to get the most VPs, the most validation process, because it is the AI that gets the most VPs that will be determined as the smartest, best AI to lead humanity to its new rebirth. And that is what you are trying to be. I just think this is such a funny, funny theme. Sorry, Starcadia Quest, you know funny theme beats the pants off you. And Starcadia Quest is also the only one that isn't in the top 1,000 on BGG of this entire bracket. It's not really that well regarded. I don't know, I've never played it. I've also never played Arcadia Quest, so what do I know? But I do know that Black Angel moved on, and it made me so, so happy. Now, speaking of brand recognition, the next battle was Terraforming Mars versus Zombicide Invader. And I wasn't sure how this one is going to go because I own Terraforming Mars. It's It's back there. Uh, I really enjoy Terraforming Mars, but a lot of people find it to be a really lengthy experience. And we had a great discussion about the benefits of Terraforming Mars and that you should always kind of start with the shorter version, or how Prelude is so important. I really think in all future editions of Terraforming Mars, they should just include Prelude, because it's just a bunch of cards and they sell it for, it's too overpriced for what it is, and yet it's so integral to the actual game. That's my opinion. But it was up against Zombicide Invader, which, speaking of brand recognition, is also kind of talked about as the worst Zombicide, although it's still in the top 1,000. It's 869 versus 4. So you can bet that Terraforming Mars won. But it was close. It was an 8-5 vote. There was a lot of love for Zombicide, although maybe people were just getting confused and thought that they were voting for Marvel Zombies. But yeah, Terraforming Mars moves on. And then we have Moonrakers versus Clank in space. And I have to be honest with you, Moonrakers is the only one on this list I forgot was on this list. It's also below the top 1,000. And I know I looked into it and how to play when I was posting and when I was creating the brackets. I always do a little breakdown of each game, but I forgot what it was all about until now. So Moonrakers is a deck building game. It was put forward as a suggestion for space-themed games. There are people who love it, and it did not get blown out. Honestly, the worst record of this tournament goes to Dune Imperium versus Star Wars Rebellion. That's a little fun fact. Well, it's just a fact. Does every fact need to be fun? I don't know how you determine the funness of a fact. That doesn't matter. But Moonrakers just seems like your standard deck builder, which is great because it was against another deck builder, Clank, but this is a deck builder with a board. So in Moonrakers, you're trying to get additional crew members so you can complete contracts. But in Clank, you're trying to run into the spaceship, steal the treasure or the supercomputer before the dragon or the evil space overlord comes and gets you. What are the merits between Clank and Space and Clank? Well, we talked about that a little bit. I own Clank, and so I don't ever feel like I will need to own or even play Clank in Space. I'd much rather try something like Clank Legacy or get some additional expansions, but there are expansions for both, which I was mistaken and corrected on in the Discord, which shows you the quality of people and discussion that we get over there. So Clank in Space moved on in an 8-4 vote. And finally, the last matchup was a squeaker. We have one game, one great, beautiful game known as this epic saga, this fantastic thematic experience, this perennial favorite, this masterpiece of design and invention. And we had that game versus Twilight Imperium 4. I'm of course talking about the space epic Bounce Off, which you may have heard me mention on this channel before. And this certainly will not be the last time I mention it on this channel, because Bounce Off pitted itself against Twilight Imperium 4. And at one point, it was in the lead. But then the voters developed a conscience, and the voters wanted to keep the sanctity of the bracket alive and put Twilight Imperium 4 forward. And it wrenched my heart in two. I was watching. I almost called it. When Bounce Off, I almost abused my power as an impartial commissioner. When Bounce Off was ahead, I was said, that's it. It is Twilight Imperium that is the loser, but unfortunately Twilight Imperium 4 moved on. Bounce Off, the most thematic experience of them all. You have to bounce your crew, managing the moon's gravity, landing them in pockets so you can harvest resources or create base camps to populate the moon. But unfortunately, it lost to the epic saga adventure that is Twilight Imperium 4. And I wish I could deliver better news to you as this final matchup in our round of 32. But I am but a lowly impartial commissioner, and Twilight Imperium moves on. So, we have our final 16. There they are. Look at them. Now, here's the moment where I want you to reply to your comment and say what you got right, what are surprises, and we'll move on. This one will go a little bit quicker. We know what all the games are as we make our way towards the definitive best space-themed board game of all time. Back to the beginning, Space Base versus Battlestar Galactica. And if this were games that I would be most likely to play next, Space Base would definitely win it. I don't own a copy of Space Base, but I know people who do. I've always enjoyed my plays with them. It's fun. It really embodies that sort of fun dice rolling element of Catan that I also enjoy. Catan was what brought me into this hobby all those many moons ago. But unfortunately, it stood no chance to the sabotage of the Cylons. Battlestar Galactica smashed it 10-5 and moved on into the final 8. Then we have Beyond the Sun versus On Mars. And going into this, I was sure that On Mars was going to smoke Beyond the Sun right out of the solar system. It was going to smoke it right into the sun and burn it up. But I'm telling you, maybe you picked up on some of the surprise in my voice that Beyond the Sun wrecked On Mars in a 9-5 vote. Similar margins to Battlestar beating Space Base. There is a lot of excitement behind this game, and it is a little bit more accessible than a Lacerda game. I played the Gallerist recently, again, it had been a long time, and I really enjoyed it. But it is a lot, and it is a lot to remember, and it's one of those games where you think you know how to play, and then you get it out again, and you go, oh no, I gotta read the whole rule book again. And it's not a small rule book. So I can understand that if Beyond the Sun manages to give that sort of accessibility with this meaty experience, I can see why it triumphed over On Mars and moved on to the final 8. Then we had Race for the Galaxy versus Gaia Project. And both had won their matchups, their previous matchups, by just 1 vote. So I wasn't sure how this one was going to go, especially after seeing that On Mars, the more meaty, chunkier one, was smashed to bits. But then again, Space Base, the more accessible one, was also smashed to bits. Well, Gaia Project is number 7 on Board Game Geek for a reason, and it smashes Race for the Galaxy. It won the race. The race, that's what I should have said. Race for the Galaxy's race ends here. See, you'd think, because of all the editing that I do, that I would take these smarter lines and just insert them and not tell you this other thing, but you know, I like to be authentic in this sort of stuff, and we're just talking off the cuff. That's probably why this video is 5 hours long. Let's go to the next to the next bracket, which is Galaxy Trucker versus Dune Imperium. And I thought Dune Imperium was going to smash this one to bits as well, because Dune Imperium had the best track record of the first match. It was the dominant force. It came into the ring flexing, pushing down Galaxy Trucker's little brother, spitting on the pieces. Dune Imperium was like, hey, I got all my pieces. We work. It works together in one finely tuned machine. But Galaxy Trucker, the love for this CGE game was pushed forward. It was a 10-10 tie at one point, and then finally, Dune Imperium, the extra votes, the passion from that fan base, was able to just push it over the top for the tiebreaker. I was blown away that Galaxy Trucker was that popular, but it is a fun time. It really is, or apparently that's what the votes say. And so Dune Imperium manages to squeak by, but only just. Fighting over our 5th spot in the final 8, we have the Search for Planet X versus Eclipse. And I thought, well, okay, Eclipse has this in the bag. I've seen that all these sort of heavier games, they're smashing these lighter games out of the water. I like Cryptid. I've never played Search for Planet X yet, so, you know, I had no real stake in the race. But I was so happy when Search for Planet X rose up and defeated Eclipse. I'm sorry if you're an Eclipse fan. Search for Planet X is better. This is the definitive list. I don't make the rules. I just report them. That's what can I say? If only you'd been there to vote for Eclipse. But Search for Planet X moves forward, which is great because Cryptid is so much fun, and Search for Planet X is like one of the ones at the top of my wish list to get because of it gives me that same sort of deduction feel. I friggin' love Cryptid, so I have no doubt that I would love this game. Although I am a little bit disappointed that the Sentient Moss could not proceed any further than this. Next match, Nemesis versus Roll for the Galaxy. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. Nemesis just flattened this one, 10-3. No contest. People love their aliens. People wanted revenge for Legendary Alien falling in the first round. Maybe Mission Red Planet would have given them a bigger run for their money. That's all I'm saying. But Roll for the Galaxy, it's a fun game. It just didn't have the legs to move forward, and Nemesis moved on. And then we have the real black sheep of the competition, Black Angel versus Terraforming Mars. And you can tell, maybe you can tell by my smile, that I'm just excited to talk about Black Angel again. Because it is. I think it is so funny. I think Black Angel and Pulsar 2849, those are the two of this list that we've talked about so far that I'm really interested in. I know I just said Search for Planet X was that I was also really interested in, but it's still in the competition. Unfortunately, Black Angel, my love for its theme was not enough to corrupt the views of everyone voting. But it came close. Terraforming Mars ended up winning in an 8-6 vote. And then finally we have Clank in Space versus what you and I all know should have been Bounce Off. If I had had a little bit more support from the true Bounce Off fans out there, even though my entire Discord is populated with Bounce Off fans, as I've stated before, they all love Bounce Off. They've really turned a corner. They really found the love after the voting happened. I think that was what happened. They all voted and then they thought, oh wait, no, you're talking about Bounce Off. They just got confused. I didn't explain it well, I guess. But Clank in Space versus Twilight Imperium 4. This one was tight. I honestly thought Twilight Imperium 4 would blow it out of the water. That's partly why everything was random except for the Twilight Imperium versus Bounce Off, because I'm not a big fan of Twilight Imperium. I've never played the 4th edition, but I'm not a big fan of the 3rd edition, and I thought that would be the funniest thing to do. So, but also the reason why Twilight Imperium was first paired up against Bounce Off is because A, two titans do need some of that competition against each other, but also because I thought Twilight Imperium would just stomp through the competition all the way to the finale. I know the fervor around that game, but this was a close vote. It ended up being 8-7 for Twilight Imperium 4. No extra votes were used on Twilight Imperium's behalf. It wasn't a tiebreaker that was close. It was won honorably. It was an honorable fight, and that moves on to finish our round of 16 into the final 8. After this word from our sponsors. Those aren't our sponsor. I just put the ad breaks where it won't be that intrusive, basically. So I'm not saying something like, well, Twilight, and then there's an ad. But we have our final 8. Now to see who the real cream of the crop is. The final 4, Battlestar Galactica versus Beyond the Sun. And at this point, I'm rooting for Beyond the Sun. I've seen this amazing run up, but unfortunately it's up against Battlestar Galactica, which is beloved by so many people, including Alex Radcliffe, as he always says. He loves that game. It's his favorite game. I have the texts to prove it. And this was a very close battle. It ended up being 10-9 for the victor. An extra vote was used to push it over the top. And Beyond the Sun toppled Battlestar Galactica to move into the final 4. And at this point, this is a fairy tale story for Beyond the Sun, I gotta tell you. I am frothing at the mouth to run out and get a copy of this game at this point. I think it's had some of the hardest matchups so far. It's beaten Dune, On Mars, and Battlestar Galactica to earn its way into the final 4. I think is just incredible. But who will it be against? On the other side of the bracket, we have Gaia Project versus Dune Imperium, and this is a really tough one. I kind of expected this to be the bracket ending at this point. I know Gaia Project is really well loved. I've heard so many great things about Dune Imperium. I wasn't sure which way this was going to go. And this ended up in a deadlocked tie. Absolutely deadlocked. It carried over voting into the next day because I don't have the time to give an extra day to vote because we're on a schedule to finish before the month so that the next month can roll around and we can feel that sense of finality. But it rolled over to the next day. People were going back and forth about the benefits of Gaia Project and Dune Imperium, and eventually someone changed their vote, and Dune Imperium ended up winning in a 12-9 vote. It's incredible. After blowing out Star Wars Rebellion, just a blowout of a vote at the beginning, it has struggled by inches to make it up here, but it has still earned its spot into the final 4. And then we have my darling, Search for Planet X versus Nemesis, which might have had the easiest run, and unfortunately, deduction can only get you so far. But the space aliens, they found Planet X, they went to the surface, and they killed all of the inhabitants and moved on forward in a 12-3 vote. Nemesis moved on. But I was really proud of Search for Planet X for making it that far, and I was really happy to see it get so far up the standings. And then finally, we have Terraforming Mars versus Twilight Imperium 4. This could be the ending bracket. I could have seen this as the final battle. These are both so well loved. One is ranked 4 on Board Game Geek. The other is ranked 6 on Board Game Geek. They are two titans of the board gaming world. It just depends where you fall. And this time it was #justice for bounce off as Twilight Imperium fell. Oh, it fell into the dust, and Terraforming Mars moved on. So we have our final four: Beyond the Sun, Dune Imperium, Nemesis, and Terraforming Mars. First to decide their seat in the finals, we have Beyond the Sun versus Dune Imperium. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I will tell you? Fairy tales do come true. Beyond the Sun also managed to topple Dune Imperium, which honestly was my bet to be in the final. I thought Dune Imperium would be in the final, no problem. And I asked that after this was done, and a lot of the members on the Discord, they also said the same thing. They thought Dune Imperium would make it all the way. Beyond the Sun managed to upset Dune Imperium. I feel like all I've been hearing in the YouTube space, the board game media space, is Dune Imperium is so, so good over and over and over. And this makes me so excited that this sort of upset happened, that there are big fans of Beyond the Sun, that it is such a cool game, that it resonates with people. It becomes my number one. I've said this so many times, but it becomes my number one game to try after this is over. Beyond the Sun moves into the finals against Nemesis. I wasn't sure what would happen. Nemesis ended up taking out Terraforming Mars. Nemesis had a pretty easy run after Gaia. There wasn't that much competition on that side of the bracket, so I wasn't sure if it would make it to the end or not, but eventually it did stomp over Terraforming Mars. And our final two is Beyond the Sun versus Nemesis to be the definitive best space-themed board game of all time. Can this be the fairy tale ending for Beyond the Sun? Or will Nemesis reign supreme? And in a tense battle, I thought there'd be a whole bunch of more extra votes being used, but I like that because a lot of people had saved their extra votes, but I also like that some of the extra votes didn't come into play because people thought, I'm not like... They were using the extra votes in the way that they were intended to be used, which is to push forward something that you're really passionate about. And so in this instance, in an 11-7 vote, Beyond the Sun was smushed under the aliens' feet, and our victor, the definitively, I'm sorry, this is it, the definitive best space-themed board game of all time. It has been determined right now, right here. It is Nemesis by Awakened Realms. And I would have put money on this to win. I thought it was going to be against Dune, though. So, hey, but actually the Dune bracket made its way all the way up. I love this game. It is so good. It's one of those games, it's very expensive, and I try not to hype up very expensive games that much, but it is one of those games that provides you with such a strong story every time that if you like atmosphere, and if you like these atmospheric games, and if you're okay with a longer rule book and a larger learning curve, because there's a lot of different closet cases to consider, and sometimes you might get bogged down a little bit by that. If you're okay with that, this is a really rewarding experience. Nemesis is fantastic. If Beyond the Sun had won, I'd have to go out and buy a copy right now and have that as my next review. But Nemesis is fantastic. And what a run. So many games got knocked out in order for this game to reign supreme. That was a fun tournament. I mean, I just had fun reliving it right now. It was also fun to watch the votes happening. Anyway, I hope that was somewhat fun to hear about. Thank you to all of my patrons for voting and being involved. Those of you who are on the Discord, who participated as much or as little. We do have an awesome Discord out there, and this isn't meant to be an advertisement for Patreon or whatever, but I just am really grateful to this Discord already. There's some awesome conversation that happens almost on the daily. We get to talk about fun things. We were all counting down or counting up the Marvel Zombie count. We've got great recommendations. People are talking about games that they're passionate about. It's awesome to be a part of that community, and to have it be the room and board community is even better. So this tournament idea started as an idea for me to do something for the patrons who are interested in supporting the channel, because the channel, you know, it takes a lot of work. I'm really not trying to give you a pitch here, but it does take a lot of work, and I want to put in more and more work, and I'm just so appreciative of everyone in there. that I wanted to do this sort of daily fun thing to help promote discussion, help make sure that it was a vibrant sort of community. Anyway, it was really fun to relive. Hopefully that was enjoyable. Make sure to hit the like button. I'll do one of these recaps, most likely for every week. This upcoming bracket I am also excited about. We voted on it. It is the solo games, and that's a genre that I'm not super familiar with, so I'm really stoked to see how it pans out. I have my suspicions, but I'm also very excited because I know there will be some surprises. If you want to get in on the action, hey, come on over and sign up for the Patreon. It's like a couple bucks a month. I'd really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. It helps me be able to keep doing this sort of thing. But if not, that's totally cool. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for sticking with me. This went on a lot longer than I expected it to, so if you're still here, thank you. I will catch you in the next one. Once again, my name is Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but I do know that Nemesis is the definitive best space board game of all time. And if anybody asks you and tries to fight it, point them at this video. I'm sorry. I wish it could be whatever you want it to be. Backpacking space kittens from Mars. Yeah, that one did look good, but it's not that. It's not Beyond the Sun. It is Nemesis. Anyway, see you in the next one.